Hi everyone, welcome back to Guitar 101. Today we're going to be talking about all the basics of acoustic guitars. I have Brandon with me. So I'm just going to ask him some of our common questions that we get asked, and he is going to give me answers. Alright, so we'll start off from the beginning. I'm kind of broad, but what are some typical and popular acoustic guitar brands that you see?
So it kind of depends on what price range you want to be in. You know, you look at the iconic acoustic guitar brands like Martin and Taylor and Gibson, you know, kind of those premium acoustics that people aspire to. But there's a lot of really great options from brands like Yamaha, Alvarez, Epiphone for more budget-friendly choices. So yeah, all really good choices in the acoustic guitar market.
Yeah, for sure. What would be, so they're made of wood, obviously. What are some differences between the types of wood that they are typically made out of?
What you see most commonly with acoustic guitars is a spruce top. A spruce is a softer wood, has a lot of resonance in it, and that's why the top of an acoustic guitar is called the soundboard. You need it to resonate a lot, and so spruce is a very good choice. You will occasionally see some other things like cedar, sometimes things like koa as well. But really the back and sides of the guitar is where you're going to see more variation. So you'll see things like rosewood, mahogany, maple. You'll get into some exotic woods like koa or cocobolo. A lot of variation, but it's the combination of the wood on the back and sides and that soundboard on the top and how they react with each other and how they resonate that gives you the overall sound of an acoustic guitar.
Obviously, there's some huge price differences, but what are the main differences between a solid back and sides guitar or a laminate back and sides guitar? Obviously, they both have the spruce top. What makes the solid back and sides so much more expensive than a laminate?
Well, you have to understand when they're using all solid wood, that means they're not using a veneer. So the entire piece of wood has to be that variety of wood. And, you know, look, acoustic guitar manufacturers go all over the entire world to find the best tone woods. So, you know, India is where a lot of the rosewood comes from, at least at this time. African mahogany. These are things that don't grow here in the US. So these woods have to be sourced from all over the world. And, you know, with the veneer, they can use any kind of wood that they have, and then they just glued that thin veneer over it. So it looks nice, and those guitars still sound okay. Again, they tend to be more of a budget-friendly option. But when you get into premium tonal woods sourced from all over the world, it's not an inexpensive thing to do, to get those woods, to use those woods to build premium guitars. But you'll notice more of a tonal difference. You'll actually hear the characteristics of rosewood or the characteristics of mahogany, whereas with the laminated back and sides, you're not going to hear much variation. You're really only going to hear the soundboard, because with a veneer, the back and sides are not resonating the way they would if they were solid.
So going into those different types of solid woods for back and sides, like rosewood, mahogany, etc., what are those tonal differences that you're describing?
It's a lot of it is how the back and sides react with the tops. So rosewood being a little bit harder of a wood, you tend to hear more emphasis on the low frequencies. A lot of people say rosewood has more bass response. You'll hear a little bit more on the top end, so it kind of gives the impression that the mids are scooped a little bit with the rosewood. Whereas mahogany is kind of the exact opposite curve. You'll hear more mid-range focus in a mahogany guitar. So these are things that you have to try out. You know, there's some misconceptions. When you look at guitars pretty much exclusively across all brands, rosewood tends to be a more expensive guitar. So sometimes we have that misconception that, oh, it's more expensive, it must be better. But that's really not the case. Rosewood is just more expensive to source in raw form. So that doesn't mean that you're going to like a rosewood guitar more than a mahogany guitar. And there's, you know, this is a rabbit hole we could go down. You've got things like maple that tend to be very bright. Again, you'll get into a lot of the exotic woods, which kind of do their own thing. And that's the important part of buying an acoustic guitar, is getting them in their hands, hearing what they sound like. With an electric guitar, you can really modify the way that they sound. You can change pickups, you can add pedals and effects and things like that. With an acoustic guitar, you really have to like the organic sound of that guitar, because there's not a lot of things that you can do to modify it.
With acoustic guitars, it's a little bit different than electric, obviously, but how would you store it?
So with an acoustic guitar, you really need to monitor humidity. Electric guitars, you should monitor humidity as well, but it's way more critical with an acoustic guitar, especially an all solid wood acoustic guitar. In winter months when there's less humidity in the air, acoustic guitars can shrink and ultimately crack. So it's definitely something that you want to monitor pretty closely. They make instrument humidifiers specifically for putting like inside an acoustic guitar sound hole, something like that. But it's definitely something that you want to protect. They are a little bit more fragile.
What's a good humidity to keep it at?
So most manufacturers recommend somewhere between 45 and 55% relative humidity as kind of the safe zone. It is possible to over-humidify a guitar, so that's something that you need to keep an eye on. I know in this region, in Ohio in particular, much more of a problem with lack of humidity, especially in the winter months. But yeah, if you can aim anywhere in that like 40 to 60 range, you should be safe.
What are the standard strings that you would typically see acoustic players use?
That's really changed a lot in recent years. Traditionally speaking, it was all bronze, mostly phosphor bronze. And that's still probably the most popular, but you're seeing some 80-20 bronze these days. You're seeing a lot more nickel bronze, which manufacturers will tell you doesn't color the tone of the guitar as much. You're hearing a little bit more of a pure acoustic guitar sound, but some sort of bronze, and generally a little heavier gauge than what you use on an electric guitar. So like a light gauge acoustic string is usually somewhere like a 12 to 53 or 54 depending on the brand, whereas a light gauge electric string would be more like a 10 to 46 kind of thing. I think a lot of that is you do a lot more string bending on electric guitar, but with acoustic guitar you just want bigger strings for a more robust sound.
And so obviously the different kinds of wood make up a huge part of the tone. How much does size play into that? Typically, like the most popular size is a dreadnought. Is there a reason for that? Like, does it sound the best? Are there other body shapes that sound better?
So I mean, I think traditionally speaking, you know, the dreadnought was the most popular, but we're seeing a huge surge in small body acoustic guitars, grand auditoriums, even grand concerts, parlors even. A lot of that, I mean, yes, it obviously affects the sound. I mean, you're going to give up a little bit of volume when you go to a smaller body guitar, but there's also a different dynamic to them. If you're somebody who plays with a soft like finger style attack, you're going to have a lighter attack but bring that guitar to its full resonance. A bigger body guitar, in order to make it really project to its full, you've got to dig in. So if you're somebody who's a hard strummer, you know, like a dreadnought or even a jumbo, where you can strum it really aggressively and not get muddy, is a factor. Also, the comfort of the guitar. If you're somebody who's a little bit smaller in stature, you know, a dreadnought might sound great to you, but it might feel bulky and uncomfortable. So I think comfort is something you really need to think about, because it could be the best sounding guitar in the world, but if you're not comfortable playing it, you're not going to play it. So it is a combination of finding the guitar is the right size for you. And while it does affect the sound, I think comfort's a bigger factor.
So another question that we see fairly often is, why should I choose a Martin over a Taylor or over a Gibson, or interchangeably? What makes those brands special?
This is a question that we get all the time, and that's one of the reasons that we carry all three of those brands, is to give people the opportunity to try each one. They get compared to each other because they're classic names in the acoustic guitar market. They're really, really very different guitars. And those companies would even tell you that they're not directly competing with each other. Different feature set on all of them, different emphasis. You know, Taylor guitars tend to be more modern, sleek, easier to play necks, built-in electronics. You know, it's a big part of those, where Martin tends to be a more traditional company, focusing more on the acoustic guitars, traditional build designs, nitrocellulose lacquer finishes instead of poly UVs. So just kind of different priorities. And then, you know, Gibson is a kind of a blend of both of those things. You've got the kind of the classic building techniques with the nitrocellulose lacquer, but most of their stuff at this point has built-in electronics as well. So just kind of different priorities for each company. And acoustic guitar is the sum of all of its parts. So they're all going to be a little different. And so you try each one and figure out which one speaks to you.
Let's say I want an acoustic guitar and I also want to play out with it. You would think that means electronics are a necessity, right? Does that mean that I have to get an acoustic guitar with electronics?
I mean, you could use a microphone in front of an acoustic guitar. That's kind of a classic thing that before electronics got decent in acoustic guitars. You would see people just step up to a microphone, but it's not the most convenient thing. So definitely having built-in electronics is pretty significant for the acoustic guitar market, you know, and then being able to plug into a PA system or an amplifier, again, just getting the sound of that acoustic guitar that you're playing amplified and out for people to hear. It's definitely the easiest way to go for sure.
One last question for you today is, I see a bunch of different kinds of acoustics. Some of them have cutaways, some of them do not. Do I need a cutaway?
Obviously, again, that comes down to preference. Cutaway has a little different aesthetic. Some people talk about the access to the upper frets, which, you know, I suppose it does give you access to the upper frets a little bit. It's still not easy to get up there on an acoustic guitar. I don't notice a huge tonal difference when you get a cutaway in there. One thing that I'll often do when people ask me that question is I'll tap on the top of the guitar in the more resonant areas and really hear how lively the top is. And if you tap on the top up there where the cutaway is going to be, it's really not doing much. So removing that material is not going to make a substantial tonal difference, but it is going to change the aesthetic, change the playability a little bit. So it's kind of a preference thing. It doesn't matter either way.
All right, well, that is all of the questions that I have for you today. If you guys have any more questions, just let us know. We'll try to get to them. These are just some of the most frequently asked questions that we get here at the store. But until next time, this is Guitar 101. Goodbye.